Welcome to the Regulatory Landscape webinar, Accelerating Offshore Wind and Nature Protection in the Netherlands. My name is Cristina Signoli. I'm the Director for Offshore Energy and Nature at the Renewables Grid Initiative, and I will be the moderator today. This webinar is organized under the umbrella of the Offshore Coalition for Energy and Nature, which is a platform of exchange between wind industry, transmission system operators, and NGOs, created in 2020 to find solutions to expedite offshore wind and grid deployment while protecting and restoring our marine ecosystems. Today, we are kicking off this new webinar series to understand the varied regulatory approaches of EU member states. As just said, as we strive to accelerate, but at the same time, we need to protect nature, as climate and biodiversity crises are interlinked and targets for both needs to be achieved. We start with the Netherlands, for which we collaborated with the North Sea Foundation for the organization of this webinar. And we are starting with the Netherlands because of the important offshore wind capacity installed so far, and therefore the experience, but also because the Netherlands is part of the ambitious plans for the North Sea that have been announced last year, with pledges to multiply the capacity of offshore wind by 8 times in the same basin and making the North Sea the Europe's biggest green power plant. Therefore, we start by asking how is the Netherlands addressing the challenge, as this can be of help to understand the complexity, to learn from the mistakes, but also, let me say, to being inspired by innovative solutions. So for all of you participating, we ask you to briefly respond to a survey, which you will find in the chat, to help us understand where you come from and which sector you cover. Also, you have the chance to ask questions in the Q&A chat and also to vote for those based on the relevance to you. This will help us in the discussion later on. Now, without further ado, I would like to present Kees Stiegelboet. I hope I pronounced this correctly. He is the policy advisor from the Netherlands Wind Energy Association. And Kees will outline for us the key policies, regulations, and initiatives that are being considered and implemented so far in the Netherlands to make sure that offshore development happens in hand with nature protection. Now, Kees, the floor is yours, and then we will kickstart, hopefully, a very engaging and lively discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina. So, in short, I'm Kees Stiegelboet. No worries that it's hard to pronounce.
So,
I got used to all
Kees,
kinds of
we have a problem with the audio. We cannot hear you.
You don't hear me?
Now we hear you very well. So the floor is yours.
Then I found the right trick. Thank you, Christina. I'm Kees Stiegelboet. Don't worry about the pronunciation. I got used to all kinds of versions. So I work as a policy advisor for the Netherlands Wind Energy Association, the trade association for wind energy in the Netherlands. And I mostly work on spatial planning and ecology offshore. So that's also why I'm involved in the North Sea Dialogue, for example, North Sea Overleg, but also everything related to spatial planning and ecology. So this is the agenda for today. Just so you have a brief overview, but I won't name them all because that would take too much time. So we can go to the next slide. So to start off with ambitions, the Netherlands is quite ambitious when it comes to offshore wind. It should become the main source of energy for the Netherlands. That's the plan. And so for 2023, we had the goal of 4.5 gigawatts, which we accomplished. So that's very good news for the Dutch wind industry. 21 gigawatts by 2030, 50 gigawatts by 2040, and 70 gigawatts by 2050. So that's a lot, and it's very ambitious. And knowing that we want to install so much capacity, this will definitely have a large impact on ecology. Next slide. For the rollout of offshore wind, we need designated areas. In EU policy terms, better known as the acceleration areas. Here you see a map of the wind farm areas that are already in use. The ones that are in use, you see also in dark blue the actual wind farms. And the empty ones are those ones that still need to be commissioned, still need to be tendered. And so besides IJmuiden Ver, Alpha and Beta, which is about to be decommissioned, there is IJmuiden Ver Gamma, Nederwiek 1, 2 and 3, Lage Landen 1 and 2, ten noorden van de Waddeneilanden en door de wind. Well, I don't know how well you can see it on the screen, but you can see it on the map. And then for even on the longer term, there is zoekgebied 6-7, as we say in Dutch, 6-7. This is an area that will be designated for offshore wind, but the precise layout is still being discussed and will partially depend on the overall spatial planning. So it will also depend on ecology, like what areas in that area are more of ecological value, but it will also depend on shipping, fishery, and possibly also CCS and oil and gas. So that's to be decided. Next, yeah. Okay, so one of the main ways in the ecology policy of the Netherlands is the auction design. So the auction design in the Netherlands is for a big part based on so-called non-price criteria, even though in Dutch we would rather say qualitative criteria, but the idea is the same. You bid with quality, basically. And in the past, the tenders with qualitative criteria have mostly been on ecology, but also in system integration. And in theory, that can be on many other things. But anyway, it's important that in the past few tenders and the next few tenders, ecology will play an important part. And therefore, there is a comparative assessment, as it's called. And this comparative assessment entails both nature enhancement measures. So, basically improving the nature. This can, for example, be making artificial reefs, but it also contains mitigation measures. And an example of a mitigation measure would be reducing underwater sound during construction when the monopiles have to be hammered. Also, in addition, there can be pre-qualification criteria. Pre-qualification criteria can be on anything, but also on ecology. It can, for the next tender, on cybersecurity, but also when it comes to ecology, you can, for example, set minimums. So you could, for example, say like for hammering, you can maximum reach a certain amount of decibels. So this is another tool to take ecology into consideration. So the ecology criteria are based on what is called CAC. It's research that takes place I think it's every year, but every certain time. and it's the framework for ecology and cumulation, and it looks at the ecology above the water and underwater, and that means underwater mostly on underwater sound. For the next CAC, they will also take into consideration frequency of sound. And above the water, it looks mostly at birds and bats. So, next slide. So, I wanted to use an example of a tender because we have had some tenders and there will be some tenders on ecology. And hereby I use an example of Amuidenver Alpha. And if you look at the graph, you can see all the components basically, from which 15% is a financial bid. This is also done so there is still a financial component because someone can offer the best criteria, but if it's for a very big price, then it may still be better, slightly less good criteria with a lot better price. So that's why we also include a financial bid of 15%. But what you clearly see is that the biggest part of the tender is ecology, 45%. And in this case, ecology as a criteria contains reducing bird or bat casualties, reduce purpose disruption days, and improve underwater habitat, as well as improving the visibility of the wind turbine blades. But I won't go into deep in all the aspects that those you can find, but it's very important to see that 45% is ecology. I won't go into deep because I understand that Sophie will also speak about the North Sea Agreement. But the North Sea Agreement is very important for ecology policy in the Netherlands, also with regards to offshore wind. It's basically the platform that decides on the maritime spatial planning. And it's all about a sustainable use of the North Sea. So both for energy and food. So in short, for energy, the energy transition, this means on the one hand, the move from oil and gas to renewables, such as wind. But it also means that if we want to extract new gas, that it has to comply with the Paris Agreement. So. Then something that is very interesting for the Netherlands specifically is the start-stop procedure. The start-stop procedure is a procedure that aims to avoid collisions with birds and bats. So the whole idea is that if there is a mass migration of migratory birds, that the turbines get stopped. In theory, this is a very good system. However, we don't know yet that much about the effectiveness. So this is something that should be further researched. Therefore, we also need more bird radars and other technology. But there is also another thing, and that is also interesting to discuss in an international platform, that if the Netherlands does it, but other neighboring countries at the North Sea do not do it, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think this is also something where we really need international cooperation and international coordination. Also, when it comes to the bird radars, it would be very helpful to cooperate because if we see migratory birds in Norway or Scotland, that would help us to know when we should stop the turbines. And also, there is another issue that with the start-stop procedure, we mainly want to avoid collisions with birds that are endangered species. And of course, that's very hard to identify with technology. So hopefully the future technology can tell us also more about the species that are actually flying. Then another interesting policy is the BBT, Best Beschikbare Technieken, or in English, Best Available Techniques, a policy that is currently being prepared, coming also from the North Sea Agreement. It's based on the BBT that is in OSPAR legislation, but in the OSPAR legislation, it focuses on oil and gas and using technologies that avoid as much pollution as possible. The BBT coming from the North Sea Agreement focuses especially on the best technologies, so the most ecological friendly technologies for both construction, operation, and decommissioning. And this is for offshore wind, but also for oil and gas, and therefore also CCS. And I think this is a very nice idea, but we are still currently working on an assessment framework, which we're doing with the other members of the North Sea Dialogue. Then also very important, we know relatively little about ecology at sea. And we know relatively little about the effects of offshore wind at sea, what it does with the ecosystem. So therefore, a lot more research and monitoring is necessary. And therefore, it's good that operators also have the duty to do the research and monitoring at the wind farm, both underwater and above the water. And well, I'm convinced that because of improving technology, this will become better and better. So I think you will also see this in the upcoming tenders, that there will be better technology available. And we also have two research and monitoring programs in place. One of them is MONS. MONS comes from the North Sea Agreement, and WOZEP. And WOZEP, like MONS focuses also not only on offshore wind, but also on other economic activities at the North Sea. But WOZEP is specifically researching the effects of offshore wind, and therefore also tries to help with policy recommendations. Then, having said that, what we have so far in place, I would like to show some recommendations from our side. Like my laptop. So one of the things we advocate is more holistic approach of the North Sea ecosystem, because in the end, the whole North Sea, the international North Sea, is one ecosystem. And what we have seen so far is that at the Dutch North Sea, there is a lot of blueprint planning, as it's called. So, okay, this is just for wind, this is just for nature, this is just for shipping. Well, that's understandable. But if we really want to achieve more for ecology in a more efficient and effective way, a holistic view could help a lot. And that brings me also to the next point of offsetting. If you as an operator have a certain amount of money to compensate or to contribute to nature enhancement, it is not necessarily the site of the wind farm where you can do the most. And that's why it could be very effective to say, well, there are other areas in the North Sea where we could contribute a lot more to the ecosystem. And that's why we advocate also the possibilities for offsetting measures. In theory, this could even be on land. For example, if you want to strengthen certain bird populations and their breeding conditions, then offsetting can even be done on land. Then, in addition, more international coordination. Well, as I said before, the international North Sea is one ecosystem, and the marine nature areas cross borders. So it would really help if we as North Sea countries work well together on more ecology coordination. Then a more equal playing field between the economic users. So so far, wind energy is basically the newcomer on the block, as we say, the newest industry at the North Sea. And the wind industry is financially contributing a lot to ecology. However, since the wind is not the only industry that affects ecology, we think it could be an idea if all the industries try to, on the one hand, find ways to mitigate their effects, and on the other hand, also can financially contribute to the ecosystem within the space of their business case. Then we're also speaking about decommissioning with the oil and gas industry and nature NGOs, including the Dutch North Sea Foundation. And we advocate a case-by-case approach for nature-friendly decommissioning. This means that if a wind farm has to be decommissioned, that the parts that are valuable to ecology, that we leave them behind, rather than complete dismantling. And then my final point, more research and innovation and monitoring. So, well, as I mentioned before, we know relatively little. So therefore we need a lot more research and monitoring. But also we should really focus on innovation, because at least in theory, we can solve everything by innovation. So if we get better innovations, we can roll out offshore wind in a more eco-friendly way. And at the same time, this can also be an export product for the Netherlands or an export product for the European Union. So I see it as a win-win or a win-win.
Thank you very much, Kees. This is a very broad overview. So we based actually also this presentation that we recorded with Kees based on the request of the Offshore Coalition for Energy and Nature in order to understand how member states are addressing those. So that we went through the MSP, auctioning, mitigation measures, technology, research, data. So those are actually our common requests from wind industry, NGOs, and the TSOs. So I see that there are already questions from you, Kees, in the Q&A chat, but before opening then the floor to the questions that we received in the chat, and please to all of you also vote the questions, so in order to understand for us what are the most important for you. I would like then to pass the floor to Ruud de Bruyne, and I hope again that the pronunciation is correct, and Ruud working for the program Offshore Wind at the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, RDO, from the Dutch Ministry of the Economic Affairs and Climate Policy. Ruth, so you heard about the overview that Case has presented, and of course it is very ambitious. So we would like to hear from you first of all, if there is anything, I mean, to complement what Case just presented, but also from the perspective of an institutions implementing, we would like to hear more about the how and how challenging it is to implement everything that has been presented, and if there are solutions that have been found that can be then as a lesson learned, but also as inspiration for other member states in order to address properly the sustainable development of offshore wind. So, Ruth, I would pass the floor to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Well, you already heard from Kees what we're doing in the Netherlands. I think it's good to highlight one thing. We have now in the planning for the year 2030, 21 gigawatt. That will be wind farms on designated areas which are already designated. We're on track with that. But then in the year 2030, maybe 2031, we come to a point where the electricity supplies in the Netherlands, based on the current electricity demand, is already for more than 80% coming from wind and solar, wind, offshore wind on land, and solar PV. All the other ambitious for the long term, which can go even as far as 70 gigawatt by the year 2050, are related to the energy transition as a whole. Which means that beyond 2030, the further progress of the deployment of offshore wind energy will have to go hand in hand with the electrification of mobility of the industry and maybe also the use of hydrogen. So that's one thing. And I think it's fair to say that there are a number of constraints we see ahead of us. One of them, it's touched upon already by Kees, it's ecology. This energy transition should not hinder the biodiversity more than it's already hurt. And then we have some issues in the supply chain. I mean, the supply chain is not at a capacity, doesn't have the capacity yet to fulfill all the ambitions, because the Netherlands is not the only country with high ambitions. That's also challenging. And another thing is, can we mobilize enough human resources to do this all? Because at the moment we are already in a position that we have a shortage of people who can do the work. So it's not easy, but
thanks, Ruth. I mean, the supply chain and the human resources when it comes to staffing, yes, the ministers that have actually then to face this yes, complexity for sure are going to be challenging in all member states. Thanks, Ruth. So I would then ask also to Sophie de Roos. I mean, let's see if the pronunciation here is good.
It's so, nice. They have Dutch names which you cannot pronounce
yes,
in
for
English.
an Italian is not easy. So Sophie is the project lead, Nature Friendly Energy from the North Sea Foundation. And Sophie, from your perspective, a reaction to the presentation that Kees just delivered. How is this reconciliation between these energy developments and nature going? And Kees also mentioned about the North Sea Agreement. So how can you maybe tell us more also to make other member states understand what were the exchanges among different stakeholders that happen in order to come to this agreement? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Christina. Yeah, we choose some really Dutch names for you to pronounce. And And thanks everyone for watching. Nice that you're here. And it is, as Ruud said, it's definitely not easy. Also, last year, the offshore quality status report was published, and it said that the good environmental status of the North Sea wasn't reached. So it's not going well in the North Sea. And something needs to be done, especially if we see those ambitions from Kees. You need a healthy ecosystems which can create the ecological space to realize this energy transition. So it's really necessary both for the climate and biodiversity goals to have a healthy and resilient ecosystems which has ecological space to have human activities in it. So we should really work on that. Kees already mentioned it's an RGI agreement, which we have in the Netherlands. It's an agreement with, I think, almost all stakeholders from the Dutch North Sea are in it, helped create it. And it describes the three transitions the Dutch North Sea has: the nature transition, the food transition, and the energy transitions. And at the moment, you see that especially the energy transition is going really fast, really at high speed, with also the accelerations area, and that both the nature and the food transitions are lagging a little bit behind. But the North Sea Agreement, which Kees also mentioned, is now the North Sea dialogue, in which all the parties are sitting together on, all right, what are we going to do? When are we going to do it? Where? So that is quite a lot of, in Dutch we call it polderen. So a lot of discussions together with all the stakeholders, and then together look from, all right, what is the best options? And most things, everyone doesn't get fully what he wants, but no one is left behind. So we divide it a little bit. Furthermore, we should also definitely look. I think both Kees and Ruud already mentioned it. There's so much activity on the North Sea. So we should also look at cumulative impact, because that's also getting bigger and bigger. Both, from just not only offshore wind activities, but all the human activities, and also all the human activities of the whole North Sea, not only in our Dutch borders, because ecology also is outside of those borders. So I forgot one thing about the North Sea Agreement. In it, it's written that we build offshore wind farms outside designated marine protected areas. So that's also, we think it's really good that you don't do it in marine protected areas. Another point I wanted to make is that we should use the mitigation hierarchy to reduce the impact of human activities as much as possible. Kees already mentioned the last step of the mitigation hierarchy. It's offsetting, but first, before that, you should look at avoidance. So not in a marine protected area, not during a migration, and stuff like that. So avoid those. The second step is mitigation. What can you mitigate at your activity? So for examples, for underwater noise, you can use the bubble curtain. The third step is restoration. So what nature inclusive designs can you do within your project area? And the last one is offsetting, so looking somewhere else. And for example, in England that is done, because there you have the seabirds are nesting, mostly in England. So you can there look, what can we do at the nesting area to protect those. And last thing I would like to mention is that together with another environmental NGO, Natuur en Milieu, we have the Rich North Sea program in the Netherlands, which really looks at the nature enhancement in offshore wind farms. And at the moment, they are building a toolbox, an online environment in which you can see which mitigation, which nature enhancement measurements you can use.
Thanks, Sophie. So this shows that there are concrete experiences in trying actually to make sure that offshore developments are more sustainable. So that the Rich North Sea program and also the toolbox box so that we will actually look into the effectiveness. I see that the effectiveness is also among the questions of the participants of this webinar is going to be very important. Now, we opened the floor to the questions that we received from our members. I have to say that I would also have mine, but let's see, we start from there and then we see. So we have a question that received lots of interest from the participants that is related to the permitting framework for artificial reefs in the Netherlands. In particular, if permanently deployed and therefore if they will remain upon the commissioning of the wind farm, or if their deployment is coupled to the permit lifetime of the wind farm, for instance, 30 years. Now, on the decommissioning, I know that you mentioned it partially in your presentation, so that I would actually ask Kees, but I think that for sure also Sophie and Ruud, I will also pass the floor to you, because I think it's an important part, because we develop measures that actually we need to understand what is going to happen after the decommissioning and the lifetime of the wind farm. So I start from Kees, then I go to Ruud, and then to Sophie.
So first, like if a wind farm has a contract of 30 years, there's still a chance that the contract gets prolonged. That's one thing. But then when the decommissioning has to take place, well, in the first instance, the idea is that you would comply with OSPAR regulation, which currently still states that you have to dismantle everything. But we are currently researching like how we can not only make the exception in the OSPAR regulation, and I understand that is already possible, but we're trying to research how we can make a Dutch regulatory framework for offshore decommissioning, so both for offshore wind and oil and gas, and then especially for the nature enhancement measures. So if you build artificial reefs, of course you want to leave them there. That's first of all very important, but also if we cut off the monopile, what that would entail. And this is also a difficult question because who remains responsible for this monopile? And for oil and gas, there is an organization called ABN, who is a state-owned company that deals with oil and gas extraction in the Netherlands. But for wind, there is not something like that. So we also really need to find out how to do that. We may have to set up a new organization that will be responsible for this. But this is currently all being researched.
Thanks, Kees. Ruud, what's your perspective?
Well, from government perspective, there's no policy yet on decommissioning other than that you have to leave the seabed as you found it. And that already happens in the development phase. In the Netherlands, all the geotechnical and geophysical work is done by RVO, but our contractors, we put in the contract the same sentence: you have to leave the seabed as you found it. For the wind farms, when we issue a permit, the permit holder has to issue a bank guarantee for the cost of decommissioning when he starts to build the wind farm. So we, as a government, we have secured already a fund to finance the decommissioning, just in the case that the permit holder has disappeared or going bankrupt or whatever happens. So that is secured. We have no experience with decommissioning offshore wind farms yet. We're just starting. But yeah, well, my personal view is if it's for the environment, for the ecological system, better to leave some of the constructions in the seabed. Why not? But Basically, the rule is you leave the seabed as you found it, and we secured with a fund to finance that, just in case developer can't do that anymore.
Thanks, Ruth. So this is the state of the art today. So that's where we are today. And Sophie, I know that the North Sea Foundation has been consulting different stakeholders on the topic of decommissioning and also nature inclusive design solutions. So what is your take on these aspects?
Yeah, already a lot is said, and we are together with what Kay said, NVEA and also EBN. We are looking, and others. We are looking at decommissioning in the Netherlands. Do we want to let it in or not? There's already some ecological research done, especially on oil and gas, but also on some offshore wind farms. And the most ecological and biodiversity you find around the scour protection. So it's actually, there's the most biodiversity and the most animals are there. So that would be the most important to make sure that's left behind. On the wind turbine, it's not significantly more than on the scour protection. So we're still looking at it and doing research about it, but we would like that the scour protection, that would, if it will be left behind, that it would be definitely that. And then, from there, the ecosystem can grow.
Thanks. So it's an ongoing discussion, of course, based on the fact that we need to
also
wind farms, and we need to understand. Okay, what is
there are different ways to look at it. I mean, Kees mentioned, you could cut off the monopile and leave it there. You can also pull it out and use that steel for new monopiles. Circularity is also something, and you will see also in this debate there are different interests. There is an ecological interest. I'm sure fishermen would not prefer to leave the scour protection or parts of the monopiles there. That's
absolutely. Okay, so we have another question that partially goes also into the direction of the questions I wanted to ask, but actually Tag has done something more specific. We have a question about the opportunity for harmonization with Belgium legislation. Now, the question is then specifically about auctioning, and I would not ask the speakers whether they're familiar with the auctioning system in Belgium, but if there are lessons learned on the integration of non-price criteria based on ecology that you would like to pass to another member state, so that you are actually developing based on your first round and the upcoming rounds. But then I would also like to add to this another aspect, which is this holistic sea basin approach that we have been discussing about. Are there initiatives at the moment that member states are considering in order to tackle also environmental aspects from a sea basin perspective? Because we know that energy is becoming, of course, a reason of collaboration among member states. We have the North Sea, we have, from a grid perspective, we have also NSOE, the offshore network development plans. So addressing the topic from a regional perspective in order also to optimize. Is there an initiative that you would like to mention then on environmental aspects from a sea basin perspective? So we have two parts. One on quickly on lessons learned on auctioning and non-price criteria that could be useful for others. And then second, cooperation at the sea basin level on environmental aspects. Who wants to go first?
Happy to take that.
Yes.
The first time we organized a tender based on what is called non-price criteria. I don't like that term because what we are actually asking for is come up with some extra, let's say, quality in your proposal, and that's not for free. So the correct term is comparative assessment, but that's not really important. Now, the way it works in the Netherlands is when we organize a permit tender, there are three things already being done. Now, the first thing is that all the permit conditions are already defined, so and irrevocable. So the people applying for the permit know exactly what the permit conditions will be. And secondly, it's already known that our transmission system operator TenneT has a commissioning date for the platform where the wind turbines can be connected to the grid. And RVO has already made a complete characterization of the site available with the soil conditions and wind conditions, wave, etc. Then, when we have been working with these comparative assessments now a few times. Now, what happens is that for ecology, the minimum requirements are already being covered in the wind farm site decision in the permit conditions. So that is something you have to comply with. What we ask then in the tender is do something extra, and our experience is that creates a lot of creativity at the developers. They start to talk with people like Sophie. What can we do more? So there are a lot of experiments going on now, and that will certainly help us to get a better understanding of the ecological impact of offshore wind farms. So far, we have very positive experiences with that. It is the situation in the Netherlands is different from the situation in other European countries from a legal perspective, because you have to bear in mind we all have to comply with the Birds and Habitat Directive. But every member state has incorporated in their national law in a different way. I think we are very we do that in a way that it's made it very difficult. That the way the ecological impact is assessed during permit procedures is very, very strong, and it's also very necessary.
Thanks, Ruud. You outlined, some good lessons learned in terms of how to integrate these other member states. You also addressed another question, which was about whether mitigation is part of the requirements of the competitive requirements, because it's part of actually the permitting and the authorization requirements. So that you also address the fact that actually it looks the requirements in the tender auction looks at enhancement. So it's a step forward. Yes. Okay, just briefly, Ruud, if you can also comment on the sea basin collaboration on environmental aspects, and then we close the round with Kees and Sophie. Are there initiatives ongoing? We heard about the Greater North Sea Basin Initiative. What's this? And is there a chance that, being realistic, that we can actually address ecology aspects on a sea basin level, having member states then complying each other with the legislations? And I will go to you, Ruud, and then we close the round with the.
I think this is a big step forward in international cooperation, because it's already explained that there is a lot of differences in the way ecology is taken care of from a legal point of view. But it's one big ecosystem which is not very healthy, and that needs to be improved. And I think that the offshore wind industry realizes that and is very willing to contribute to that. But then the more this is addressed in an international way, and this Greater North Sea Basin Initiative is one of them. We also have the North Sea Energy Cooperation, where all the member states and the UK bordering the North Sea are already exchanging a lot of information also in the field of ecology is very helpful.
Can I take
Thank
it,
you.
Christina?
Yes, sure, Sophie, and then we go to Kees.
Yeah, and it's also what Ruud said with the non-price criteria that companies are getting more inventive, do more, and want to contribute more to the ecosystem and more nature enhancement. And of course, in the Netherlands, there are not only Dutch companies are bidding on those offshore wind farms, but also European countries. So if they think about how to enhance environment in the Netherlands because it's needed in the tender, they can also use it in their other in the other tenders around Europe. We should not be shy with only using those measurements for that wind park, but really if there are great ideas, great new inventions, do them everywhere, do them in all your wind parks. And maybe also that's of course different for competitive companies, but share them, make sure they are done not only in your offshore wind farm but in all of them, so that we can really all together give something back to nature and make sure it's getting it's being enhanced.
Thanks, Sophie. Kees, your turn on both aspects. I mean, complementing what
Yeah,
also
so when it
said.
comes to the auctions, now Ruud explained well, but I think what is very nice, what is very valuable is that there is a competition also on innovations. So the businesses can come up with new innovations that stimulate ecology. I think that's a great plus of our auction system and can be used in other countries as well. When it comes to the other point, of course, there's a Greater North Sea Basin Initiative. This is a very good step, but it's the beginning stage. So we have to see how it will work out. But it's also a positive sign that the North Seas Energy Corporation, ANSEC, is also touching upon the issue of ecology. And furthermore, I'm in touch with other North Sea wind energy associations. I think we all see this common interest. So I think if we cooperate well together, we can really work on this.
Thanks, Kees. So I would like to, before then sharing also some other information related to this series of webinars with all the participants, I would like just to do a last round. Round which says, you have answer to the question, can we actually embrace both offshore winds and nature? Yes or no? And just one thing of those that you mentioned, or maybe you didn't mention, though, that we need to work on in the future more in order then to achieve this. Who wants to break the ice? It's just one wish that would make then this reconciliation possible.
Well, I think it's, let's be clear, it's impossible to do whatever activity on the North Sea without any impact on the ecosystem. That's impossible. But for offshore wind, I'm convinced that it is possible that with mitigating measures and with measures that improve the biodiversity at sea, the balance is positive in a way that offshore wind can contribute to a more healthy ecosystem on the North Sea.
Thanks, Ruud.
I agree as well, but that it's also because we have now really high ambitions in the Netherlands, maybe slow them down or have them a little bit later. And so that also the three transitions I mentioned can all go together. And because now nature and the food transition are so lacking behind, that they first can catch up. And then the three of them can go into the future. And then I think it's possible.
Thanks, Sophie. Kees.
Now, and in addition, what Ruud already said, he was a good spokesperson for NVIDIA. I think that also because of the gaining knowledge and the improvements of technologies, that we will also be able in the future to roll out offshore wind in a lot more eco-friendly way. So apart from that, we're already taking so much measures, apart from that, we're already doing so much to improve the ecosystem. I think also by the increase of research and innovation, we can do a lot more.
Thanks, Kees, and thanks to all the speakers because this is, of course, an ongoing discussion, so that we will need then to update each other maybe in 6 months, 12 months, in order to understand where we are at. So we will see huge developments in offshore developments, but also in these solutions that we talk about today. So thank you very much. Now, I would like to remind all the participants that after each webinar, this is the first. So if you want to stay up to date with the next webinars, please register to the newsletter that my colleagues are posting in the chat. We will be publishing after each webinar a fact sheet. The fact sheet will be distributed in order to have to provide the key insights into the topics that we cover in our expert webinars from our speakers, so that you will have then a collection of fact sheets from all member states. We would like also to remind all of you that the Offshore Coalition for Energy and Nature will be present at the Wind Europe Annual Conference in Bilbao, which will take place from the 20th until the 22nd of March. We will be addressing those topics about nature-friendly offshore developments at our booth, at workshops, and many presentations along with our members at the booth that will be present at the exhibition area. So again, my colleagues are going to post the link so that we are bringing even more ambitious discussions about offshore wind and biodiversity at the Wind Europe conference. I would like then to remind all of you, if it's possible, to complete the survey that we announced at the very beginning, which allows us then to understand how to cover also other member states and the presence of those in our webinar. And by saying that, I would like to thank you all for the participation today, to the speakers and to the participants, and stay tuned, because we are going very soon then to have a new webinar addressing how another of our member states is addressing the reconciliation of offshore wind and energy. So I would like to thank you all very much again, and we stay in touch.
Thank you.